Part 14. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 131. Chapter 131 Apprenticeship. When it gets dark, the whole family gathers around the hot stove to finally eat dumplings. Tao Hongying filled 3 bowls first, giving one to Mr. Kui, one to Dr. Zhang, and one to the village chief and Uncle Zhao. There aren't many dumplings, it's just my intention. Compared to other families, the Li family has the most fine noodles. But there were only 4 bowls of dumplings left on the stove, which was not enough to eat. Tao Hongying had already prepared it. She also cooked sorghum rice porridge in another small pot, 1 bowl for each person, with pickles on the side. 4 bowls of dumplings were placed in the middle of the table to eat as a dish. Ms. Li picked up 4 or 5 for her granddaughter, and each of her grandchildren picked up 2 more, so there wasn't much left. She also wanted to give it to her son and daughter-in-law, but Li Lao said he had a bad stomach and didn't want to eat. Li Lao-san said he wanted to drink porridge, and Li Lao-si said he ate roasted rabbit during the day. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru also refused to use their chopsticks, obviously wanting to save food for the elderly and children. These are the pillars of the family, who always do the hardest work. But it is the most reluctant to part with the money to eat and drink. It seems that as long as the elderly and children have enough to eat and drink, they are happier than eating by themselves. In the end, Ms. Li persisted. They only ate 2 or 3 of them each and then refused to use their chopsticks again. Jiyan grabbed the dumpling in her hand and tried to bite it with her little teeth. Seeing her mother secretly take out her dumpling and put it into her father's bowl, she felt sour and warm in her heart, and almost shed tears. Then she worked harder and harder to eat. She wanted to grow up quickly and make more money so that her family would have endless dumplings. Days passed day by day, and the small mountain stream was like a machine. At the beginning, the running in was a bit awkward, but after half a month, it was already running at a high speed and was extremely proficient. Patrol, night watch, drill, hunting. No one is left behind, and every day is busy and fulfilling. After fighting against wolves, traveling hard, risking one's life to suppress bandits, and even witnessing the tragic situation of the Guo family, everyone has a more intuitive understanding of this troubled world. They don't make themselves stronger, they don't sharpen their knives, they don't run faster, and they don't unite. Then their fate will not be any better than that of the Guo family. Every day, the farm men who would have been sweating profusely in the fields, holding hatchets in their hands, kept cutting at the straw men made of tied hay. Behead, chop off the arms, knock down and chop off the legs. In short, they didn't practice many moves, but they were all killer moves. Strive to use the minimum amount of effort to maximize the damage to the enemy. Because their courage, strength, and even skills are not enough to support them in fighting any enemy for hundreds of moves. You just have to work hard. If you fight hard, you might still be alive. If you don't fight, you'll die. The women are in the cave, taking care of the elderly and children, boiling water for cooking, and occasionally opening the curtain to look down, which makes them feel much safer. Maybe one day in the future, they may still die, but at least they have struggled and fought against this world. In the small cave, Mr. Wen was also talking to Ms. Kui. Although we are called the Tianwu dynasty, since the founding of the country 200 years ago, Yuanzhou has been suppressing military generals and civilian officials. The constant fighting between the court and the country has caused the country's strength to become worse and worse. Otherwise, it would not be oppressed by a small barbarian tribe. To this point. Yes, the family of military generals during the founding of the People's Republic of China have all withered away, and today's military generals cannot stop the barbarians at all. The imperial court has done things like moving the capital. I am afraid that if the Yuanzhou finds out, he will rush back from Jiquan. Ms. Kui didn't know what she was thinking of and sighed. Mr. Kui glanced at the villagers below for the last time, and said, if we were Tianwu, and all the people were soldiers, and all the people practiced martial arts, even if they were like the villagers below, we wouldn't have reached the point where we are now, like a lost dog. Before he could finish his words, Dr. John climbed up from under the cave. The old man did not go around the bush and said directly, Mr. Wen, I am here to lobby. The Li family wants Jiren to worship you as their teacher. In the future, let the family Ren has been studying with you, so I asked you to ask. After that, he seemed to be afraid that Mr. Wen would not agree, so he added, according to my opinion, I naturally hope that you agree. Even if you don't formally accept disciples, you can only teach them for a period of time. The Li family, don't look at it as just a farmer. But this family has some weird abilities, which are different from ordinary farmers. Why is it different? Mr. Wen didn't want to refuse. After all, Jiren was smart and hard-working, and he was really good at studying. He was also happy to see him, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to give him all his money during this period of time. Dr. John clicked his lips twice, and then said, I can't tell, but it just feels different. In addition, I'm afraid you don't know, I came to Li's house because Yeziazi brought me from Kyoto. I originally wanted to save Yeziazi's life. When I arrived, Yeziazi actually recovered completely. Yeziazi said that he could heal himself without any medicine, but how is that possible? Also, many families were killed this time, including the Guo family. But look at the Li family and the entire village, not a single one of them died. Don't you think something is wrong? In short, this Li family is either deeply blessed or hiding an expert. It would not be wrong to make friends with their family. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Kui looked at each other and laughed. Okay, then I will listen to you and accept Jiren as my disciple. Mr. Wen agreed directly, and Dr. Zhang immediately left. The Li family were also happy when they heard about it, and Jiren was even more excited. He is very aware of Mr. Wen's knowledge. He is definitely very lucky to have Mr. Wen as his teacher. Mrs. Li made arrangements at that time. It happened that Li Laozi was not on duty the next day, so she invited the leader Lu, brought Ji Yi and Lu Yang, and the four of them went into the forest again, and came back with a red deer that night. On the third day, the whole village, old and young, went down to the cave and lit a dozen bonfires. The Li family brought out half a bag of sorghum rice, killed deer to stew meat, cooked vegetable porridge, and held a banquet. In the presence of the whole village, a grand apprenticeship ceremony was held for Mr. Wen and Jiren. Jiren tidied everything up neatly, knelt respectfully in front of Mr. Wen, and kowtowed 3 times. Mr. Wen was a little excited and said loudly, since you have accepted me as your teacher, you will become a member of our sect from now on. As a teacher, I want to tell you that our sect is not an unknown person. In the Tianwu academic sect, we are the Xingxiu school is committed to the study of Xingxiu, and also supports the enlightenment of people's wisdom and attaches great importance to elementary education. Your master, my teacher, was once a great scholar of the dynasty. Because he hated the fighting in the court, he retired to the countryside and finally died of illness. Mrs. Kui is your sister-in-law, and I am your master's disciple. I have no choice but to live a mediocre life and never carry forward the school of mind learning. You are my first disciple. I don't know if you will have other junior disciples in the future, but as senior brother, the glory of the division will be in your hands in the future. We have known each other since we were young and have been in difficulties. As a teacher, I can't help you much, but I will teach you everything I have learned without any reservation. Having said that, he solemnly took out a jade pendant from his arms. Your master carved this with his own hands and gave it to me when he accepted his disciples. Now it is given to you. I hope you will cherish it. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 132. Chapter 132, Victory is in sight. Jiaran kowtowed solemnly again, and then took the jade pendant with both hands. Thank you, sir, I will study hard in the future, carry forward the master's sect, protect my relatives and friends, respect my teachers, and never slack off. Mr. Wen nodded and helped him stand up with his own hands. Jiaran turned around and saluted Mrs. Kui again, sister-in-law. Hey, Mrs. Kui responded, already in tears. I don't know whether she was thinking of her deceased father, or she was happy that there was a successor to her father's teachings. Old Mrs. Li felt sad, patted her on the shoulder and advised her. From now on we are a family, and we have to look for the best in everything. Ji Yan also climbed into Mrs. Kui's arms and wiped her tears with her little hands. Mrs. Kui hugged Ji Yan tightly, but her back straightened even more. The people in the village were very happy when they saw that Jiaran had become a good gentleman and came forward to express their congratulations. Congratulations, Mr. Wen, for gaining a good disciple. Yes, Mr. Wen, you don't know that Jiaran is the best child in our village. Yes, study hard, be filial and sensible, and you will definitely do nothing wrong in the future. Mr. Wen also smiled and thanked everyone with his hands. Suddenly, the Li family's banquet was held. The men sat around the shed, roasting meat and eating meat. The women also fed their children while eating. Old Mrs. Li felt sorry for the half bag of grain, but she knew it was worth the money. Sometimes she feels that this escape is really magical. If she lives a good life in Sci-fi, the family will be stable, but how can the fourth child and Ji Yi become so strong, and how can the grandson find such a good husband? Wealth can be gained through danger, this saying is true. After officially becoming a disciple, Mr. Wen's requirements for Jiaran were much higher. Jiaran went to the small cave to study almost as soon as it got dark. He didn't come back to sleep until after dark. He almost did all his eating, drinking, and diarrhea there. Old Mrs. Li simply discussed it with her daughter-in-law, and Tao Hongying followed her, fully responsible for the 2 meals a day in the small cave. Although Mrs. Kui recovered and sister-in-law Kyan was there to help, neither of them looked like they could do housework and could even make porridge. In order not to waste food, to feed her children well, and to respect her teachers, Tao Hongying had to go. Good news often follows me when I have nothing to do. I have to say that the pile of books in the Guo family really saved Mrs. Kui and helped her pass away too much boring time. Sometimes, she could hold a book and sit still for an hour or two. Ji Yan occasionally turned over, and it was a headache for the traditional Chinese characters, and she was not fulfilled. She crowded Mrs. Kui's arms and asked her to read. Mrs. Kui was pleased that the little girl was eager to learn, so she hugged her and half reclined on the bed, with warm stones under her feet and a thick quilt covering her, and they read together. When I meet someone I'm interested in, my eyes will sparkle when I hear the good news. If I hear the boring poems, my mouth will water when I fall asleep when the good news is a lullaby. Tao Hongying was previously worried that Mrs. Kui would be bored, but slowly seeing her holding Ji Yan with a particularly gentle expression on her face, she gave up the idea of carrying her daughter out. As a woman, she can better understand the sorrow in Mrs. Kui's heart. It would be a good thing if her daughter's innocence can bring some comfort to Mrs. Kui. Just like that, Ji Yan listened to stories and books during the day, lay in bed at night, secretly practiced her mental power in space, and took care of the chickens, ducks, geese, and pigs, and her days flew by. One day the village chief flipped through the almanac in the package and suddenly shouted, "Oh, the new year is in 3 days." This sentence made everyone busy. Although they were fleeing and the conditions were limited, they still had to prepare for the new year. The old year can be hard, sad, and confusing, but the new year is coming, and we must pray for good weather, peace, and health. This time, Mrs. Li decided to make a meal of dumplings that could feed the whole family without adding sorghum rice porridge. To seek good omens and encourage the whole family. In the past, it was the old lady who looked at the bag of fine grains. This time Ji-yin took advantage of the third ant's first scoop of noodles and secretly added 2 ladles. Zhao Yuru thought it was given by the small cave and didn't care. After all, there are few people there and there is relatively a lot of food. It just so happened that Mrs. Li was still talking, invite Mr. Wen, Mrs. Kui, and Dr. Zhang to the New Year's Eve dinner. Then ask Lao Zhao and the others, and invite them all if they can. Maybe she was afraid that her daughter-in-law would be reluctant to part with her, so she added, old Zhao and the others originally ate with our family. Mr. Wen is Jiaren's husband, and Dr. Zhang is an honored guest entrusted to our family by Mr. Ye. They cannot be left behind. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru of course agreed, so on New Year's Eve, the Li family cave was almost overcrowded. The Li family prepared dumplings filled with dried venison and wild boar and mushrooms, stewed a large pot of rabbit meat, boiled pheasant soup, and baked 2-faced pancakes with sorghum noodles and thin noodles. Everyone was well fed, chatting and laughing, and in full swing. The same is true in other caves, with children playing and adults gossiping. In such troubled times, there can still be days like this, everyone seems to be dreaming. But after the new year, as the snow in the mountains and forests is melting, and the food bags of each family are dwindling, everyone knows that the day of embarking on the journey again is coming. After waiting for another half-month, the snow on the sunny slopes in the mountains and forests has almost melted away. Everyone started to pack their luggage, and they were reluctant to part with it, but things like seats and benches had to be thrown away. Li Laosan and his people made 20 large sledges, and each family loaded them with things. It was a still cold early morning. Everyone had a full meal and looked at the mountain stream where they had lived for 4 months with reluctance in their eyes. Especially for Jiaren, the Guo family has so many books that they really can't take them away, so they can only keep most of them and wait for an opportunity to pick them up in the future. Although the entrance to the cave was blocked by his uncle and brother carrying big rocks, so that no birds or beasts could enter and cause harm, he was still worried. After all, these books were too precious. No matter how reluctant or anxious they were, everyone bravely embarked on the journey. After a winter of training, the villagers have become more cooperative and stronger. The remaining dozen mountains were climbed in just 20 days. Of course, along the way, they encountered wolves and wild bears who woke up early to look for food to fill their bellies. But this time, the wolves followed them for a day and then retreated. The black bear even contributed his bear skin and went to see the Lord of Hell. This gave the villagers great confidence, and they became more united and more courageous. One day in March, a family of 98 people, old and young, finally stood on the top of the last mountain, looking at the Jinsha River not far below the mountain and the pier with large ships parked on the riverside. Everyone was moved to tears. Eyes filled with tears, he cried loudly. We are out, woo woo, we can live. Everyone could no longer bear it and wished they could go down the mountain and cross the river without stopping for a moment. The sledge that used to feel heavy was now being pulled very fast. Everyone reached the foot of the mountain before sunset. It's a pity that Wangshan ran to death. Even if we reach the foot of the mountain, we are still 7 or 8 miles away from the pier. The old people discussed it and decided to continue on their way. When they arrived at the dock, it would definitely be safer with the protection of the Imperial Army. With hungry stomachs, everyone dragged their luggage and rushed to the dock. The young boys kept running ahead happily, calling their parents to hurry up from time to time. Everyone was smiling. Walking on the official road saves a lot of energy compared to walking in the mountains and forests. Just when victory was in sight, a rumble of horse hooves suddenly came from behind. Lu Biatu, who was holding the battle, looked back subconsciously and his eyes were split with shock. He yelled with all his strength, "Throw the thing away, run, run to the dock." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 133. Chapter 133, Falling Short of Success. Everyone was startled and turned around to look, and then their expressions all changed. Ah, the barbarians are coming, run, run. Mom, I'm scared. Dad, Dad. The team that had been happy just now suddenly became a mess. The women took away the children, and the men carried the old people on their backs. In the rush, they didn't even care about their luggage. Li Laosi raised his hand to lift the luggage off the back of Daking Mule, and the old lady immediately carried him on. Jia and Jia 11 ran too far and had no time to look for it. He then pulled Mrs. Kui and the two little babies and put them on the back of the mule. Then, with a heavy slap, Daking ran away. Mrs. Li's face was pale. While trying to support Mrs. Kui, she opened the back basket behind her and held her granddaughter in her arms. In this way, whether the arrow is shot or the sword is slashed, it will fall on her first. Tao Hongying ran forward, grabbed Jiaxijian, gritted her teeth and continued running. Happy family, good luck, run quickly, run to the pier, don't look back. Zhao Yuru helped the village chief support the frail wife of the village chief. Sister-in-law Qian grabbed a little baby with one hand and ran after Daking Mule. Li Lao Er, Li Lao San, Wen Hai and others took advantage of Uncle Zhao and others. Jiaran actually went to get the package containing the books, but was slapped on the head by Mr. Wen. You don't want your life, run away. Li Laosi picked up Dr. Zhang who was sitting on the sledge and threw him directly on Ji Yi's back, run. After saying that, he picked up the hatchet and ran back against the crowd. Obviously, he was worried and could not leave Lu Baiatu alone to fight against the barbarians. Woohoo, old four, old four. When the Li family saw him, they tried to stop him but couldn't. They couldn't, so they could only cry loudly and run forward. Jiyan was fast asleep on her grandma's back, but suddenly she was held in her arms and ran wildly. Listening to the crying in her ears, she even thought she was having a nightmare. Milk, breast, she wanted to get up and see what was going on, but the old lady didn't allow her to poke her head in. Run, run, go to the pier to help. Woohoo, go to the pier, go to the pier. In just 5 or 6 miles, we were so close to escaping, but it seemed farther than the dozens of mountains that everyone had crossed. The child ran away and lost his shoes, the old man stumbled, and the woman cried loudly. But none of this could stop the barbarians on horseback. As if they saw prey, they urged the tall horses under their crotches more and more, brandishing the long knives in their hands, roaring and screaming, and rushed towards them. Some even bent their bows, knocked arrows, and shot out. 30 barbarians and 30 horses, like wild beasts rushing out of the wilderness, came with billowing smoke and dust, which was extremely terrifying. Lu Baiatu and Li Laosi raised their long knives high, gritted their teeth, and charged forward. 2 versus 30, a match that was bound to lose, but the two of them moved forward bravely. Because, behind them are their wives, children, and fellow villagers who depend on each other. Everyone can be afraid, but not them. Come on, you bastard. I'll fight hard. Kill 1 to earn enough money, kill 2 to earn a pair. Kill, if you want to go over, step on my body. The barbarian was startled by the suicidal charge of the 2 men, but he smiled ferociously. They rushed forward faster and faster, raising their sabers high and bringing them down hard. Without thinking, Li Laosi and Lu Baiatu rushed forward and swung the long knives in their hands horizontally. The 2 war horses in the lead were unable to dodge under the rapid charge, and their front legs were cut off directly, and they fell to the ground with a thud. The war horses behind were unable to dodge and bumped into each other one after another, falling into a heap. Li Laosi and Lu Biatu jumped up and started to cut off the heads one by one. Everything happened as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, 5 or 6 barbarians died and 7 or 8 horses were lost. This completely aroused the ferocity of the barbarian, who screamed and surrounded him. Li Laosi and Lu Biatu also fought hard, back to back, waving their swords with all their strength. The villagers who were running wildly in front turned around and their eyes were red with anxiety. "My dear, run away, I have to go back to help." "Father, mother, you run away first, I want to go back." "No, I have to save the 4th child." "Lu Biatu, we are here." One villager after another, leaving the elderly and children behind, they ran back with hatchets in hand. Ji Yi also handed over Dr. Zhang to Jiawen, and caught up with Lu Yang, who was a few steps ahead. "Wait for me, let's go kill the barbarians together." The woman cried harder and harder, but she didn't dare to stop. "Wu, help, help. Come and save us." Jiyan was pressed tightly to her chest by her grandma. Listening to her violent heartbeat, she finally guessed that the barbarians were coming to chase her. She struggled to get up. "Grandma." The old lady was panting like a bellows. "Fu Niu, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, Grandma is here." Jiyan wanted to speak, but 2 arrows shot over, one pierced Daking's butt, and the other penetrated the old lady's shoulder. The old lady screamed, and Daking went crazy. He suddenly accelerated and threw everyone off his back. The old lady held the good news tightly in her arms, flew high, and then fell heavily under the official road. Mrs. Kui tried hard to hold on to the 2 little dolls, but luckily they fell into the grass on the side of the road. Li Lao Er and Li Lao San ran forward, jumped off the official road, and helped their mother and niece up. Original Mrs. Li's shoulder was bleeding, and her face turned pale in pain. There was no movement at all about the good news. Li Lao Er suddenly touched the back of his niece's head, and there was blood on his hand. "Fu Niu," Mrs. Li was so heartbroken with pain that she hugged her granddaughter tightly. "Fu Niu, wake up quickly, help me, my Fu Niu, help me." The villagers heard this in the confusion and turned to look over. They were all shocked by the tragic sight of the grandfather and grandson. The village chief and Uncle Zhao stopped and looked at each other with deep hatred in their eyes. "Let's fight, we old guys have survived to this point, we are good enough. Kill back, fight back. I want to kill a few more barbarians, and I can brag to my brothers even after I get to Jiquan." The village chief pushed his old wife directly to Zhao Yuru, held up a hatchet, and rushed back with Uncle Zhao and others. Li Lao Er also wanted to follow, but Li Lao San pulled him back. "Second brother, you stay here. If we die, you can be filial to our mother and raise our children." After saying that, he climbed up the official road and ran in the fighting circle. Li Lao Er stamped his feet anxiously, but with his niece in one hand and his mother in the other, he could only hug his niece and help his mother to continue running. Tears fell to the ground drop by drop. For the first time in his life, he hated himself for not learning martial arts. At the pier 3 miles away, many lights were lit because the sky was getting dark. There were soldiers guarding both sides of the pier. They heard cries in the distance. A captain came forward to report, "General, it seems that some fleeing people have been entangled by barbarians." The general looked to be in his 20s, with red lips and white teeth, and even powder on his face. Perhaps he thought the armor was too heavy, so he didn't wear a helmet, and the armor was also worn crookedly. Hearing this, he glanced far away and responded nonchalantly, "It's so far away that I can't see clearly. Besides, almost everyone has arrived in the south of the Yangtze River. How can there be anyone left at this time?" The captain was a little impatient and advised in a low voice, "General, it's better to send someone to have a look. What if the people are really fleeing? We are so close, it doesn't take much effort." The general became impatient, squinted his eyes and cursed, "Are you ordering me? Are you the general, or am I the general? I won't send troops if I can't tell you. You have to disobey me." The captain quickly lowered his head and said, "I don't dare. Of course I will listen to the general." The general snorted coldly and said nothing more. The captain held back his anger and slowly retreated. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 134. Chapter 134 Let's Die Together. On the official road, Lu Biatu and Lu Laosi, who were fighting back to back, finally received reinforcements. The two of them were covered in blood, some of them were their own, and more were those of the barbarians. Kill the barbarians, take revenge, take revenge. Beasts, I'm going to chop off your heads. The villagers rushed forward with red eyes, brandishing hatchets and risking their lives, quickly turning the tide of the battle, but only by a few points. The barbarian was caught off guard just now. Now that he has recovered, he is not so easy to kill. Fortunately, the villagers have been killing wolves and bandits in the mountains and forests for 2 or 3 months, and they are no longer weak farmers. It's not that easy for the barbarians to kill them at the moment. At this time, the women and children in the village finally ran to the pier. "Help, help, there are barbarians, please help us, Weavio, help." The children also cried loudly, "Oh, oh, save my daddy." The soldiers guarding the dock could see clearly this time. They were all Tianwei people. Someone immediately came forward and asked, "Are there really barbarians? How many people are here?" Li Lao responded loudly, 20 or 30 of them, all riding horses and armed with bows and arrows. "The young men in our village have started fighting with the barbarians. Please go and save them, sir." "Wu, help, sir, please save our man." "Help, we finally got here and encountered barbarians again, woohoo, help." The old women were also crying bitterly, and the children were even more dizzy, looking for their parents everywhere. Old Mrs. Li hugged her granddaughter, and the blood all over her body felt cold. "Mr. Zhang, please save Fu Niu quickly, woohoo, Fu Niu has hurt her head." Mr. Zhang almost ran away with half his life, but just as he was about to step forward, he heard the lieutenant making another request to the general. "General, would you like to take 100 people to take a look? 30 barbarians are not many. It is really a victory, and it is also the credit of the general." Unexpectedly, the general snorted coldly, "It's easy for you to say. The barbarians are so fierce. How can you win? Besides, it's okay to win, but you have to bear the responsibility for defeat." Shanai Zhang's bad temper exploded at that time. "What are you talking about, boy? You are a general, and it is your duty to protect the people. You are so afraid of losing the battle that you refuse to save them. What is your name? I'm going to file a complaint and slap your body skin." The general already looked down upon this group of people fleeing the famine, and he was even more annoyed when he heard these words. "Old immortal, who are you talking about? I just won't save you, what can you do to me? You say you are a commoner of Tianwu and you are fleeing from the famine in the north? It's been half a year, who knows where you came from? Yes. I also said that you are the spies of the barbarians and are planning to sneak into Jiangnan." He just said it casually, and after saying it, he felt that the reason was really good. So, he waved his hand and ordered, "Catch them and interrogate them first. I suspect that they are spies sent from the north." The soldiers were a little hesitant. After all, they were not fools. These people looked like their own people. Moreover, the old, weak, women and children had escaped, while the men were still fighting the barbarians behind. It's okay for them not to send troops to rescue. Instead, they arrested the elderly and children. It really cannot be justified in their conscience. The captain gritted his teeth and persuaded, "General, let's wait a little longer and ask for clarification first." The general turned around and gave the captain a kick. "You want to disobey orders, don't you? If you disobey orders over and over again, you don't want to live anymore." The captain couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, "General, these are our Tianhua people. We managed to escape here. We can't just die without saving them. Even if they are far away, how can we watch them when they are right in front of us?" He was killed by a barbarian. The general felt that he had been humiliated, so he drew his sword and was about to kill the captain. Shenzhong Dr. Zhang quickly helped Ji Yin treat the wound on his head, but Mrs. Li's arrow wound was too serious and could not be treated at the moment. Hearing the general's chatter again, he reached into his pocket to dig it out. Halfway through, he remembered that he had fed the poison to bandits on the road, and the old man was so angry that he was about to explode. "Bitch, you saved your life today, otherwise I will make you bleed from all your orifices and go see the Lord of Hell immediately." The general was also angry, and he replied at that time, "I won't send troops, and all of you will see the Lord of Hell." Wen Hai also went to fight with the barbarians, leaving Mr. Wen to support Mrs. Kui. Now he stepped forward and said with a dark face, "I am Wen Qinglin, the editor of the Hanlin Academy, and a close minister of the Emperor. You must send troops immediately, otherwise I will definitely tell the Emperor everything about today's matter." The general hesitated a little, but after glancing at the embarrassed old, weak, women and children, as well as the soldiers on one side, he raised his chin again. "You said you are the editor of the Hanlin Academy, who can prove it? Besides, we are guarding the dock to protect the safety of the Emperor and the Queen Mother, and we cannot leave our posts without authorization. You, an editor, actually ignore the safety of the Emperor and the Queen Mother and only care about a group of people. Untouchable, what crime do you deserve?" "You," Mr. Wen's eyes turned black with anger, and Mrs. Kui gritted her teeth, pushed Mr. Wen away and stepped forward to yell, "Are you the Dingbei army? I am the Marquis of Dingbei. I order you to send 100 troops, quickly go rescue the people." The general turned to look at her and suddenly laughed, extremely proud. "I said you are spies, but you still don't admit it. Who are you pretending to be? You are pretending to be Mrs. Dingbei. Mrs. Dingbei died before the capital was moved. My sister just married into Dingbei mansion a few days ago. My sister is Mrs. Dingbei. Haha, you are dead." He waved his hand and said, "Come here, arrest them." This time, the soldiers did not hesitate. They were indeed the Dingbei army, and the Marquis of Dingbei had indeed just married a new wife. Mrs. Kui's face was ashen and she was about to fall down when her legs became weak. Mr. Wen helped her up. Li Lao Er, Mrs. Li and others listened for a long time, and their hearts felt cold. So what if they ran to the dock? These soldiers didn't want to send troops at all. Mr. Zhang is not good, Mr. Wen is not good, and Mrs. Kui is not good. Could it be that they went through all the hard work just to die in front of the door of survival? Beasts, bitches, I'll fight you. You are the untouchable, and your whole family is untouchable. If you don't let us live, we will die together, die together. Fight with them. Wow, the father of the child can't live anymore, and neither can I. God, please open your eyes and kill these beasts, our life is so miserable." Old Mrs. Li was really crazy. She thrust the good news into Mrs. Kui's arms, and with a long arrow on her shoulder, she hit the general hard. The general did not expect that these untouchables who were fleeing would dare to take action. One of them had no idea and was hit in the stomach by Mrs. Li. He fell on his back and screamed in pain. Before he could get up, the crazy old lady Li was already riding on him. "My son is fighting for his life. My granddaughter hurt her head. Our family is going to die. Then don't live either. We killed wild wolves, killed bandits, we finally climbed out of the mountain, and you actually refused to save us? Then, let's die together, die together. She cursed and grabbed a handful, turning the general into a gourd in the blink of an eye. Other women also rushed forward, crying and helping. Some people held down the general's arms and legs, some kicked him in the head, and some even hugged his hand and bit him. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 135. Chapter 135, You Can't Live Without Going Crazy. The general screamed repeatedly and wanted to curse and call for help, but a handful of gravel was stuffed into his mouth, choking him and rolling his eyes. The soldiers did not expect these women to be so strong, and they were so shocked that they forgot to step forward to stop them. Just a few of them reacted, but after taking 2 steps, they were overtaken by the captain again. "General, General, how are you? Let us go, General." The captain shouted loudly and seemed to be in a hurry, but his body blocked several soldiers, preventing them from taking a step forward. Ji-Yin woke up at this moment. The severe pain in the back of her head made her eyesight go black. She struggled to get up. "Grandma, Daddy, Mommy." Mrs. Kui burst into tears and hugged her tightly. "Fu Niu, your father is killing barbarians. Wivu, don't be afraid, my aunt will protect you." Ji-Yin was so anxious that she said, quickly, "Go find my dad. Take me to find my dad." She tried her best to struggle towards the official road. She couldn't see anything at all in the night, but there were shouts of killing coming from the other side. The large pile of stones she had stored in space has begun to float. But the distance is too far and the sky is too dark. Only by going there and being nearby can you know where to fall. Mr. Wen saw that Mrs. Kui could not hold Ji-Yin, so he stepped forward to take it and wanted to comfort him a few words, but Ji-Yin had already bit his wrist. "Send me to my father, go quickly." The little child screamed heartbreakingly, making everyone think that the child could not live without his father. Who could believe that a little girl could kill barbarians and save her relatives? Everyone is getting more and more sad and angry. "Oh my God, please open your eyes. Don't let your children lose their homes. Wu, what are we doing here? We might as well be eaten by wolves in the mountains. Wu, the bandits are killing us, the barbarians are killing us, and our own soldiers are refusing to save us. What are we doing alive? Let's die together, let's die together." The old people all imitated Mrs. Li's example and bumped into the soldiers one by one. The soldiers did not dare to fight back and could only retreat step by step. At this time, the general finally spit out half a mouthful of sand and shouted vaguely, "What are you waiting for? Save people." He originally wanted to let his subordinates rescue him, but the captain immediately shouted, "The general has agreed to save people. Come on, come 100 people and follow me to kill the barbarians." Immediately, a group of soldiers rushed forward and wanted to follow him to rescue people. At this moment, the rumble of horse hooves suddenly sounded in the distance, and they ran over in the blink of an eye. The captain was surprised and shouted loudly, "It's Marquis Inting, it's General Yet." One of the soldiers staggered after being hit by the old man. He could only pull the old man away and shouted, "Don't embarrass us. Marquis Inting is here. He specializes in killing barbarians. Your family can be saved. Is there any help?" The old and young women were a little confused. They didn't know who Inting Hao was, but they were happy that they were saved. "Ugh, are you really saved? Wow, God has opened his eyes, there is help, there is help." Half of Mrs. Li's body was soaked with blood. When she suddenly heard that reinforcements were coming, she let out a sigh of relief and fell off the general. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yura cried and helped her aside, "Mr. Zhang, Dr. Zhang, please help." Shenjia Dr. Zhang also jumped anxiously, "Everything is in the luggage, and it's dark, so we can't save him now." Tao Hongying gritted her teeth, turned around and ran towards the official road, followed by Zhao Yuru. Jiaran was about to follow, but Mr. Kui held him tightly. Don't cause trouble. If anything happens to you again, the family will not be able to survive. Jiaran couldn't hide, but Jiawan dodged and chased after him. The general reluctantly turned over and sat up, furious. Untouchables, you dare to hit me? I will kill you. As a result, before he could stand up, Jiaran had already picked up a hatchet and put it directly on his neck. Don't move, if you dare to touch my family, I will chop off your head. The family was dying, and the grandmother and sister were seriously injured, which finally drove this gentle young man who devoted himself to studying to madness. The general gritted his teeth in hatred, but he really didn't dare to move. The soldiers on the side looked shameless and lowered their heads more and more, pretending that Quan was invisible. The smart one shouted fiercely, "Boy, put down the knife. You can't hurt our general." Yes, yes, put down the sword quickly, general, be careful." It's a pity that even though they said this, no one came forward. Jian didn't care about this anymore. She lay on Mr. Wen's shoulder and stared into the distance. At this moment, she was extremely angry. She wanted to grow up immediately. When she doesn't want to be like this, she can only look at her like this. So what if there were rocks in the space? She still couldn't help or save her life. She could only watch helplessly. Dad, Mother. The child's cry was blown away by the cold as soon as it came out. But in the distance, Li Laozi, who was exhausted, miraculously heard it. My daughter is calling him, Fu Niu is calling him. He cannot fall or die. His daughter is still young. What will she do in the future without her father? Who raised her? Who can I turn to for support when I'm bullied? Suddenly, his arm, which seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, gained strength again. He raised the sharp hatchet, ran towards the barbarian next to him and chopped it down. The hatchet got stuck on the barbarian's neck bone, causing the barbarian to scream in pain, but the saber in the barbarian's hand still kept going. Ji Yi was covered in blood, and his eyes were covered with blood. He was pressed under him by the barbarians, and his heart was full of despair. This time I am really going to die? I wonder how Grandma and Dad would cry if they knew. He still wants to be a general and go to more interesting places, but he has no chance, right? At this moment, Li Laozi picked up the barbarian and threw him out like a windmill. In the blink of an eye, the situation is reversed. Li Laozi grabbed his nephew and said, "Keep killing, don't be discouraged." After saying that, he ran to the side again. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and 3 other people were fighting against a barbarian. Uncle Zhao was stabbed in the back and gave the village chief an opportunity. The village chief cut off the barbarian's arm with one knife. Li Laozi arrived just in time, jumped up as high as he could, and kicked the barbarian out. He is so brave that he ignites the fighting spirit of all desperate young and old men. Kill, keep killing. I will fight with you. The barbarians were also so angry that they couldn't care less about anything and rushed forward with strange screams. They entered the central plains, and everywhere they went they were invincible. They beat the Tianwu soldiers like lost dogs, and the emperor even drove them out of the capital. Now I have suffered such a big loss from a group of mud-legged people. For a time, one side wanted to fight hard, the other wanted to vent their anger, and the fight became even more fierce. From time to time, villagers fell down, and barbarians were constantly hacked to death. At the critical moment, a cavalry team suddenly ran up, shouting loudly, "Tianwu people, retreat! Tianwu people, retreat!" The villagers reacted immediately, crying and shouting, "The reinforcements are coming, the reinforcements are coming!" Everyone retreated to the woods on both sides, grabbing whoever they could. Don't worry about whether they were injured or not, no one was left behind. The barbarians were also panicked, turned around and wanted to run away. It's a pity that the Tianwu soldiers have already caught up with him. Like a tide, the barbarians were quickly submerged. They didn't even have a chance to scream, and were completely hacked to death with random swords. Torches were held up and passed forward, illuminating everyone in Qingshui village clearly. Everyone was injured and covered in blood. They dared not put down the hatchet in their hands, but their hands were trembling. These are ordinary people. But what allowed them to fight the barbarians to this extent? Even the elite Tianwu soldiers could not be so brave in a head-on confrontation with the barbarians. The soldiers were surprised and confused, but for a while they were strangely quiet. At this time, the general who led the troops jumped off his horse, lifted the visor on his helmet, and shouted to Li Laosi, "Qiu Sheng." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 136. Chapter 136. The Savior has arrived. Li Laosi was stunned for a moment, wondering how the general knew his name. After taking a closer look, the general had taken off his helmet, revealing a handsome face. Li Laosi and Li Laosan, who still had family righteousness, immediately ran over in ecstasy. "Master Ye, Mr. Ye." Mr. Ye opened his arms and hugged them vigorously. He also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he came back earlier today, otherwise he would have almost missed it. "Why did you come here? I've been waiting for 5 months. We were trapped in the mountains. We climbed a total of 40 mountains and spent the winter in the mountains. When we came out, we encountered barbarians." Li Laosi said a few words in one breath and quickly asked for help. "Mr. Ye, help everyone, these are all from our village." My mother and Fu Niu ran to the dock to ask for help, but no one came. Mr. Ye frowned. He had just passed by the dock and heard the noise and crying. It's obvious that the dockside is unwilling to send troops to rescue people. He waved his hand and called the deputy general over, and quickly gave orders. Soon, everyone was quickly helped onto their horses and rushed to the dock. Those who were too injured to ride on horses were carried by the soldiers on their backs. They really admire these people from the bottom of their hearts. If the people of Tianwu were so brave, why did the barbarians occupy the capital and drive them to the south of the Yangtze River? Not far away, everyone met Tao Hongying, Zhao Yuru and Jie Huan, who were desperately looking for the luggage of miracle Dr. Zhang. Suddenly seeing Mr. Ye and his family, the three of them burst into tears. "Wu, Mr. Ye, help me, my mother was hit by an arrow, and Fu Niu broke her head. Let's look for Dr. Zhang's luggage again and treat my mother's injuries." Mr. Ye's face changed with shock and he shouted loudly, "Bring all your luggage with you." After saying that, he hit the horse and ran, heading straight to the dock like a gust of wind. Ji Yang cried until his eyes turned black. He vaguely saw someone running towards him, so he shouted loudly, "Dad, Daddy! Mom!" Ye Gongfei dismounted and hugged her over, "Don't be afraid, Fu Niu, Uncle is here." Ji Yan was stunned for a moment. When she recognized Mr. Ye, she hugged his neck and burst into tears. "Wu, my dad killed the barbarians, and Grandma bleeds, they didn't take me to save Dad." Mr. Ye patted her back gently. Others would be confused after hearing these words, but he knew best that this little girl was probably not lying. If she said she could save people, there must be a way. It's a pity that no one here believes it and forced the little girl to become like this. At this moment, Li Laosi, Tao Hongying and others also rushed back. When Li Laosi heard his daughter crying, his heart felt like a knife, but it was a good thing that his daughter could cry. With a pop, he knelt down next to his mother first. "Mom, how are you?" We are back, my brother and Ji are fine. Old Mrs. Lee was bleeding from half her body, and she drove the old people crazy and worked hard just to wait for the sentence. At this moment she couldn't hold on anymore and completely passed out. Mother! The Lee family rushed forward like crazy, and Ji-yin was also struggling in Mr. Yes' arms. Grandma, Grandma. Ji-yen even threw down the hatchet in his hand and rushed over. The general finally got free, jumped up and cursed loudly, "Damn untouchables, how dare you put a knife on my neck? Come on, kill them all. Kill them all." Mr. Ye stepped forward and kicked him in the stomach. "Just now, I saw the barbarians killing my Tianhua people. Why didn't you send troops to respond?" The general was rolling on the ground in pain and could not speak. The captain responded. The general said it was too far to see clearly. Mr. Ye pointed to the old, weak, women and children who were crying loudly. "Then they are all here, why don't you go and save them?" The general said these people came too late, maybe they are spies from the north. The captain's response was accurate, and he didn't add any embarrassment, but he completely betrayed the general. Mr. Ye gritted his teeth with hatred, went up and kicked the general until he fainted. "Come here, tie him up and lock him up. Tomorrow the Japanese general will go to file a complaint in person and accuse him of not saving him until he dies." The captain quickly added, "Master Marquis, I'm afraid this is not good. The general is our new brother-in-law, the Marquis of Dingbei. Please show mercy, General." Mr. Ye looked at him deeply. He could tell clearly whether it was a plea or a reminder. The guards immediately stepped forward, grabbed the screaming general and dragged him down. For a time, all the soldiers on the dock did not dare to take a breath, especially the soldiers of the Dingbei army who had just refused to save themselves. For safety reasons, boats are not allowed to operate at the pier at night. If everyone cannot reach the other side, they must rest on the spot and receive treatment for their injuries. With the matter just now, the Dingbei army did not dare to delay, and quickly sent out tents and lit bonfires. None of the young and old men in Qingshui village was without injuries. Fortunately, most of them had minor injuries, and 7 or 8 were seriously injured, including Mrs. Lee and Ji-yen. There are so many people that divine Dr. John can't handle it all by himself. Soon, all the military doctors on duty at the dock were also transferred. More than a dozen tents were set up outside the pier, and each tent was filled with people. Medicine pots were also set up on the bonfire, and medicine began to be brewed. Ji-yen was lying beside her grandma in a daze. The severe pain in the back of her head made her wake up for a while, and then fell into darkness again. Tears flowed down the corners of her eyes. Mrs. Lee had already pulled out the arrow from her shoulder, but she lost too much blood and remained unconscious. She even developed a high fever and started talking nonsense. "Fu Niu, my Fu Niu has fallen, please help me, save my Fu Niu. Old Four is going to fight for his life, who will save us? Fu Niu, you can't take it anymore, they are going to burn you to death like a monster." Everyone in the Lee family gathered around, gritting their teeth and crying silently. Jiaxi Jian's eyes were swollen like walnuts. "Oh, I don't want my grandma to die, and I don't want my sister to die either." "Shut up." "What nonsense," Tao Hongying slapped her son on the head, but she couldn't bear to let him go. She hugged her son and started crying. Li Laosi was shirtless, with numerous large and small wounds on his body. He was covered with medicine and tied with cloth strips, but was still soaked in blood. Li Laosan had one arm hanging, and Ji Yi had his legs tied. But none of them seemed to feel any pain, and kept their eyes on my mother and Ji-yen. Mr. Ye opened the tent and walked in. He stretched out his hand to touch the old lady's forehead and patted Ji-yen's little hand. His eyes were full of guilt. "Don't worry, I've sent people to Jiangnan to get good medicine. As long as you survive tonight, you'll be fine." Everyone in the Li family nodded. In order to distract everyone, Mr. Ye asked about what happened after the separation. Li Lauer fled with everyone, collected money at the city gate, detoured into the mountains, fought wolves, killed bandits, and spent the winter in the mountains until tonight. Master Ye, is Tianwu already rotten, seeing the people being massacred by the barbarians? The soldiers and generals all watched, but they actually refused to respond. Li Lauer was finally angry and asked. Mr. Ye shook his head helplessly. The sudden move of Kyoto to the south was too hasty. When we got here, we had to rely on some local aristocratic families and gave up some official positions. The person responsible for guarding the Jinsha River is Dingbiu's 30,000-strong army. This general tonight I was originally a playboy, but I was placed here because my sister married the Marquis of Dingbei as his new wife. He also regretted, because I was on a mission to exterminate the nearby barbarians and led troops to travel around, I was unable to stay at the dock and failed to receive you in time. Li Lauer said quickly, Master Ye, I don't blame you, it's because we were delayed on the way, and it's because this dog general hates people so much. Tomorrow, he will no longer be a general. A flash of anger flashed in Mr. Ye's eyes. No one knew how murderous he was just now. If he hadn't come back early, he might have had to collect the bodies in time for the Li family. Will it cause trouble for you? Everyone in the Li family didn't understand the intrigues in the court, but they also knew that Ding Bei Ho had so many soldiers and generals, so he must be a very big official. Offending his wife and brother must not be a trivial matter. Mr. Ye was not prepared to say anything more, he just wanted to reassure them. Shen Yizhang was so busy that he shouted outside, Young man Ye, come on. Find someone to help me. Lao Zhao and the others are seriously injured. Mr. Ye and the Li brothers all hurried out. The knife on Uncle Zhao's back was too deep and too long. He was almost dead at this moment, and he relied on Dr. Zhang's silver needle to survive. The village chief also lost an arm and was unconscious from the pain. He could no longer wield the pipe and pot. The other old men were also seriously injured. They had just returned, holding back the barbarians with the hope of death to gain more opportunities for the younger generations. It's a blessing to be able to come back with a breath now. In the middle of the night, Mr. Ye arranged for someone to deliver the medicinal materials, including a century-old ginseng. Jiyan didn't know this at all. The pain in the back of her head made her dizzy and nauseous. She would often only vomit, then fall into a coma the moment she woke up. She had no time to save herself, let alone others. The luck is too bad. Who can think of being thrown down by Daking? Grandma hugs her so tightly, and the back of the brain can still hit the stone. She was anxious and wanted to enter the space. I don't know when the space was closed, it was chaotic, and I couldn't find the door at all. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 137. Chapter 137. It is better to seek help from others than from yourself. I don't know how long it took, but she seemed to be picked up. She turned around and vomited again when she was dizzy, but then someone gave her water and put a small thing in her mouth. The familiar strange astringent smell made her try to open her eyes, and she saw Mr. Ye holding her in his arms. Perhaps when he saw that she was awake, Mr. Ye's eyes lit up. He quickly gave her some more water and whispered in her ear. Fu Niu, take the medicine quickly. This is what you gave me. Don't worry, everyone is fine. Jiyan tried her best to turn her head to see the grandmother next to her, but Mr. Ye stopped her. Dr. Zhang said you have a wound on your head and cannot move. Your grandma has bandaged the wound and taken pills, and the fever has gone down. Jiyan was completely relieved. He drank a lot of water and wanted to talk, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. Before she fell into coma completely, she smiled with the corner of her mouth. Good people are still rewarded. At first, she couldn't bear to see Mr. Ye die of illness and took the risk to give him pills. Later, she regretted it, especially after being scared by her grandma. But she didn't expect that her recklessness not only saved Mr. Ye's life, but also saved her own and grandma's lives. It even saved the lives of the whole family and the whole village. Mr. Ye carefully held the little girl in his arms and couldn't help but frown, feeling extremely distressed. Tao Hongying came in from the outside and saw that everyone in the family was dozing off, but it was Mr. Ye who was holding his daughter. She stretched out her hand to take it, but Mr. Ye refused. When Jiyan woke up again, it was already noon on the second day. Everyone moved the camp to the dock. Although no one from the Dingbei army came to drive them away, no one dared to get close because Mr. Ye had already gone to file a petition. The villagers made fires to cook and took care of the injured, silent but full of anger and grievance. Jiyan was held in her arms by her mother and ate half a bowl of porridge, and drank some bitter medicine. She tried it silently, but still couldn't enter the space. Obviously, her brain or mental power is the medium connecting the spatial courtyard. Now that I have an injury on my head, I have temporarily lost contact with the space courtyard. This is like riding a bicycle, and the chain falls off at a critical moment. Jiyan was very depressed. Fortunately, her head was not so uncomfortable anymore. Grandma also woke up for a while and fell asleep again. She was not in danger of her life. The whole family feels more at ease and is finally in the mood to eat and sleep. In the other tents, the village chief and Uncle Zhao also came forward. Although it took a long time to raise them, they finally did not commit their lives here. The men in the village, as long as they could move, were sitting outside warming themselves by the fire. They seemed to be resting, but in fact they all had hatchets at hand. Last night's desperate attempt to save lives made it clear to all of them that at the critical moment, they still have to rely on themselves to save their lives. At dusk, Mr. Ye finally came back and brought the news that the general had been dismissed. The villagers still couldn't understand their hatred, but the village chief said, "That's good enough. Don't embarrass Mr. Ye." Besides, everyone scratched the man's face and the injuries were serious. He won't be able to see anyone for several months. Everyone lowered their heads. In fact, they knew in their hearts that they were just ordinary people. Let alone one of them, they were all dead. What could they do to the general? The village chief thanked Mr. Ye on behalf of the villagers. Mr. Ye waved his hand and said, "I will send out troops the day after tomorrow, so I can't stay with you all the time. But tomorrow I will you across the river, and you can rest in the south of the Yangtze River for a few days. I will ask people to send you food and supplies, and you will have food and accommodation, don't worry." He picked up Jiyan skillfully and patted it twice. "There is an immigration department here, which will re-register you with your household registration, issue road guides, and find you a place to stay. Each person can also be allocated 4 acres of wasteland, and you don't have to pay food taxes for 2 years. You can live there in peace, and I'll give you half a month. You'll be back in about a minute." Everyone nodded, and the village chief was also happy. "Mr. Ye, thank you for your help. If we hadn't met you, our entire village would have been dead. Mr. Ye refused to take credit. When I was in trouble, it was only because Aunt Li's family took good care of me that I am today. A great kindness must be repaid generously, and this is what it should be." Everyone looked at the Li family, and they felt more and more that they were fleeing with their family. Couldn't be more true. There was nothing to say all night. On the next day, Mr. Ye found a big boat, loaded all the people and their luggage on the boat, and sent them to the other side of the river. Jiyan was once again half dizzy due to the swaying in the water. By the time she was able to disembark and settle down again, and when she had completely recovered, Mr. Ye had already left in a hurry with his troops. The new camp is located at the west gate of a city, which is also the busiest city gate connected to the dock. The villagers found it strange and walked around the camp. They were looked at like monkeys by everyone. The village chief felt uneasy, and Li Lauer and others also felt uncomfortable staying here. So after some discussion, Li Lao took a few villagers to find a thatched shed at the gate of the city. There is a sign of Immigration Department 3 hanging outside the thatched shed, but there are only 2 clerks on duty. Hearing that people wanted to register their household registrations, get directions, and divide wasteland, the clerk was very impatient. Li Lao understood the idea and gave each of them a piece of silver. Sure enough, the 2 clerks immediately became much more enthusiastic and asked with a smile, "Where did you come from? It's been half a year since the capital was moved, and you just came here. Isn't it going to be easy?" Li Lao quickly apologized and responded, "Isn't that so, sir? We have endured a lot of hardships on the road. It's hard to explain. We are from Qingshui village, Juniang County, a total of 93 people, old and young. Thank you, sir." The 2 officials were surprised. The distance is not that short, and the whole village walked here together. Yes, the old and young men in the village all get along well. They helped each other along the way and got here. It's not easy, it's really not easy. You people in the village are of one mind, but if you are not of one mind, you won't get here. After exchanging a few words, the 2 opened the book and registered everyone's household registration. It's not too troublesome. Even one household only records the names of men. The elderly, children and women are all left behind. Just report the specific number of people. Soon, Li Lao got the road guide. There were nearly 100 people in a village, and a total of 10 tickets were given. When it was time to choose a place to stay, before I could take out the land book, another clerk suddenly came in from outside. The clerk briefly glanced at everyone, and then pulled the 2 clerks out of the office with a smile. The villagers didn't think anything of it, they just thought it would be fine after a while. But Li Lao's heart skipped a beat and he quietly followed him out. The 3 clerks were walking a little far away and spoke softly, so he couldn't hear them. But it was clear that the clerk who came later gave 2 ingots of silver to the 2 people working in the office. At that time, he turned back and called a villager, and gave several instructions in a low voice. Soon, the 2 petty officials came back, and the village chief was also carried on his back. The 2 clerks lost their previous amiability, coughed twice, and said with a cold face, "There are 94 people in your village and 25 households. According to the rules, you will be divided into 5 places. We will circle 2 places in a while, and you can allocate 1 for yourself." "What? We need to settle down separately." The faces of the villagers all changed. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 138. Chapter 138. We want to be together. No, we have to stay together and not separate. Yes, we want to be together. The villagers immediately became anxious and rushed forward one after another, surrounding the 2 small officials. The 2 clerks did not expect that the villagers would be so excited. They were startled, but then they stared and yelled, back off, what are you going to do? Do you want to cause trouble?" The villagers clenched their fists and refused to step back or speak. Their blood-red eyes made the 2 officials even more panicked. Did they see it wrong? Why do these mud-legged people seem to have murderous intent in their eyes? At this time, Li Lao coughed, helped the village chief come forward, placed the village chief on a chair, and then said, "Have you 2 officials heard what happened at the dock the day before yesterday? People from Jiangbei came to seek refuge, but they encountered barbarians outside the dock. The Dingbei army guarding the dock refused to send troops to respond, and in the end, the Marquis of Xintinghe arrived with his troops and killed 30 barbarian cavalry." The 2 clerks didn't react for a moment, so they nodded and said, "I heard about it, but what does this have to do with you?" The village chief smiled coldly and pulled off the big coat he was wearing, revealing half of his arm. Other villagers also took off their cotton-padded jackets one after another, revealing their scarred bodies. The clerk was so shocked that he gasped. What else didn't he understand? These people are the mud-legged people who killed the barbarians. There has been a lot of discussion about this matter in the city in the past 2 days. Everyone said that this group of people was tough. When they met the barbarians, not one of them died, but they killed more than a dozen barbarians. I heard that Marquis Zinting arrived with his troops, but it was just a matter of finishing. In fact, the 30 barbarian cavalry were all killed by this group of people. Of course, what is more famous is that the Marquis of Zinting actually filed a royal warrant for this group of people. The guard who refused to save him was directly beaten, and the Marquis of Dingbei was also reprimanded. Thinking again of their colleagues who had just come to look for them, both of them felt a little regretful. Li Laoer looked at the faces of the two people, felt confident, and said again. We also know that the two officials have no grudges against us. This is because some people don't like us, but we don't want to suffer. When the time comes, this matter will definitely come to the Marquis. I think you can bear it. Is it Mr. Ho's anger? In other words, we don't even need Mr. Ho to show up for this. Li Laoer pulled out a string of wolf teeth from his sleeves and continued in a normal tone, "Two gentlemen, look at this string of wolf teeth, is it good? I spent the winter in the mountains before and encountered a pack of wolves. There was not a single one left. Let us kill them all. There was also a group of bandits who were very arrogant. They kidnapped our children, and we came to our door and cut off their heads. Speaking of which, we northerners are barbaric. We don't want to be offended for anything, and we don't want to take revenge. Willing to stay overnight." The two clerks looked at the wolf's fang and then at the crowd. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. That, brothers, don't worry, this matter can't be slowed down. Yes, let's think of a way. The two clerks quickly opened the book, searched again and again, and finally looked at each other and said. We don't mean to embarrass you. If you separate, the 5 villages are very good, but if you want to separate them together, there is no good place. Are you still planning to, not separate? The villagers did not hesitate and said in unison, we will not separate, we will stay together. The village chief leaned on his chair, his face pale, and he nodded, we must be together. Li Laoer glanced at the young official, the Marquis is going to kill the barbarians now, but after he comes back, he will come to live in our village. If the place is not good, I'm afraid he will bring us over to exchange, and then we will have to excuse me, sirs. The two clerks looked bitter and pushed the booklet directly to Li Laoer. You can't change even if you want to. There are nearly 100 of you, and the land allocated is 400 acres. Other places are too small, and this is the only place that fits the bill. Li Laoer was not polite and quickly flipped through the book. The two clerks did not lie. The rest of the places were stamped with seals, except for a few places, which also indicated that there were only a few dozen acres of wasteland. The place assigned to them is about 70 miles to the south, and 100 miles away is the new capital, Guizhou Prefecture. 30 miles apart, it's considered close. He discussed it in a low voice with the village chief and decided on this place. The two clerks breathed a sigh of relief, completed the formalities quickly, and finally sent the group of people away. The two of them stood in the shed. One of them wiped his hands with cold sweat and said, what should we do? These evil spirits have been taken away, but over there, how to explain? How do we explain it? Another sneered, they only said that it would be difficult for these people, but they didn't say how hard it would be. Besides, the space allocated to these people is enough for us to explain. Not to mention the private discussion between the two small officials, it is just that everyone in the village was very happy when they heard that they were assigned together and were very close to the new capital. After all, this is an unfamiliar place, so everyone can be together in one place, which makes me feel much more at ease. Everyone gathered together to discuss that they should leave early as this is not a place to stay long. Mr. Ye is not here. If anyone wants to cause trouble, they are afraid they will suffer a loss. So everyone packed their things quickly, hired 7 or 8 carriages at a high price, and set off early the next morning with their families. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Kui are still in the team, riding in the same carriage as the Li family. Mrs. Kui held Ji Yin in her arms, feeling sorry for her that her face had lost weight due to her injury. Old Mrs. Li was lying on the thick quilt, but the wound was still throbbing with the bumps of the carriage. She tried her best to endure it, chatting with Mrs. Kui to change her mind. "Madam, when you should go home, just go home and don't worry about us. We also have a new place to stay, and our days will definitely get better and better in the future." Mrs. Kui smiled and said, "Auntie, I can rest assured when you arrive and settle down. Also, Auntie, please call me Jinro from now on. I am Jiaran senior aunt and also your junior. In addition to my senior brothers, my natal family is full of people. There is no one left, and I plan to treat our family as my mother's family in the future, so don't dislike me." "I don't dislike it, I don't dislike it." Old Mrs. Li was happy. "You are from a noble family, and you are close to Fu Niu. To be honest, I was hoping that you would help us teach her when Fu Niu was older. This child is too smart. I'm always afraid of growing crooked." Mrs. Kui gently patted the good news and agreed in one breath, "Okay, Auntie, you can't go back on this matter. Fu Niu will be my little disciple from now on. If you don't regret it, of course you won't regret it." Mrs. Li touched her granddaughter's fat feet and felt extremely distressed. "It's all my fault. I didn't even protect this girl in my arms." "Auntie, don't say that in such a chaotic time. It's good to be able to survive. This girl is lucky she survived the disaster and will definitely be better in the future." Okay, let me lend you some good words." The carriage moved forward, and I heard a few words of good news in a trance, but was soon swayed to sleep again. The back of her head is still swollen, making it difficult for her to move easily. But Dr. Zhang had to perform acupuncture every day and guaranteed that she would be cured in half a month, so she was not so afraid. The 70-mile journey was actually not that far, but there were many injuries, both old and young, on the bus. We had to stay overnight on the road, and we only arrived at Xiajin village in Nangxi County, which was written on the land deed, at noon the next day. There happened to be farmers busy in the fields, preparing for spring plowing. When they saw Li Lao asking for directions, he took them there. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 139. Chapter 139. I avenged everyone. Everyone looked at the 2 bare hills in front of them and the gravel valley between the hills, and they were all dumbfounded. "Old man, is this really Broken Gold Beach?" The old farmer who led the way was very honest and kind, and he was not impatient and spoke slowly. "Yes, the Broken Gold Beach to the north of Xiajin village in Nangxi County is right here." After saying that, he glanced at everyone, with some sympathy in his eyes. "Did you not provide any benefits to others when you registered your household registration? Why were you assigned here?" Everyone looked ugly. Although the 2 clerks grouped them together, they did not offend the person behind them. Li Lao managed to maintain a smile and brought 2 meat buns to the old man. "This is the dry food I bought in the city yesterday to eat on the road. I have nothing to do as a favor now, so I can only take it out." The old man was very happy, and Li Dian went back to find his grandson. There were more than 90 people in the village, old and young, and they were silent for a long time in front of the 2 hills. After all, it was the village chief who spoke. "Don't worry, everyone, no matter how bad things are here, It's still better than being in the mountains. At least there are no wolves, no bandits, and no barbarians. As long as we put our efforts in one place, we can always live a better life. Li Lao also said quickly, my uncle is right. The food Mr. Ye gave us earlier is enough to feed our whole village for 2 months. Let's build a shed first, settle down, have a full meal, and then think of a solution. Li Laozi and Lu Biatu also stood up. They were young after all. Although they had numerous wounds, they were almost healed in just a few days. At this moment, they immediately gathered their hands and went up the mountain to cut down trees to build sheds, chop wood for fire, and move stones to stack earthen stoves. For a time, except for a few seriously injured people, everyone in the village became busy. When night fell, several simple shacks were erected near the foot of the mountain, porridge was cooked on the earthen stoves, and pancakes were pasted. Even the women dug a lot of wild vegetables nearby and brought them back, washed them and simply mixed them, which was quite delicious. Everyone ate in silence, feeling no peace of mind after the dust had settled. Instead, they were hanging in the air, not knowing where to go from here. Jiyan was held in her arms by her mother, and she ate japonica rice porridge in small sips. Because minced meat and chopped wild onions were added, it tasted very good, so she insisted on eating more than half of the bowl. Tao Hongying was so happy that she discussed with her family, tomorrow I'll go to a nearby village and bring back some radish and cabbage. If I have a hen, I'll also buy one. Fu Niu and my mother should take good care of themselves. Li Laozi nodded and said, you go ahead. I plan to go a little further and visit the new capital city. We are new here and don't know anything. We always want to inquire about the news and see if our place of residence can be changed. One change. Lu Biatu on the side heard this and said, you go ahead, I'll guard here. Li Lao also said, I will also go to the city together. When it comes to inquiring about news, I am more familiar with it than you. After dinner, a few people went to the village chief and Uncle Zhao, discussed it for a few words, and finally decided. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Kui sat by the campfire and wanted to say something, but they were not people who made empty promises and swallowed their words in the end. Early on the next morning, Li Lao and Li Laozi brought 2 young people from the village into the city. 30 miles, there were no big green mules, and the 4 walked for an hour. When they entered the city, they had already been 3 rods. Weizhou Prefecture was originally just a relatively prosperous place in the south of the Yangtze River, but it suddenly became a new capital city. The impact and changes it suffered cannot be explained clearly in one sentence. The courtyard in the city originally cost 500 taels, but it immediately increased to 2,000. Grain, salt, and various supplies have skyrocketed. Many of the original people complained so much that they simply sold their yards and took a sum of money and moved to the countryside. Like this, slowly changing for half a year, the city was almost completely occupied by wealthy families from Kyoto, as well as civil and military officials and their families. A grain of ashes of the times is like a mountain when it falls on the heads of ordinary people, but for these wealthy families who have had wealth and power for hundreds of years, dust is just dust. In Zindu, people are still coming and going on the commercial streets. Women in New Year's attire, their mouths and noses covered with fans, walked past with charming smiles. The young master in a wide robe and long sleeves swaggered through the market while swinging a folding fan. Brother Gongzi. Li Laozi grabbed the second brother and the villagers who were still in a daze, and quickly hid behind a wonton stall. Second brother, I saw General Chiao, the who refused to save himself that night. You go shopping first and ask for news, and I will follow you to take a look. We will meet at the city gate in 2 hours. After saying that, he turned around and disappeared without waiting for his second brother to nod. Li Lao was so angry that he was so brave that he dared to run around here. But he had no choice but to find a medicine shop quickly and buy a few medicinal materials that the miracle Dr. Zhang was short of. Then he went to a butcher's shop and bought some stick bones and pork. Finally, he found a lively small tea house at the gate of the city and sat down. There were people from all walks of life in the tea house. One said that someone had a quarrel with another in the city, and another said that a gang fight in the village outside the city killed people. It was all chaos. Not to mention that Li Lao frowned more and more as he listened, but Li Lao Si followed Mr. Jiao all the way to a bluestone alley behind the shopping street. The alleys are very clean, and red lanterns are hung at the door of each house. Mr. Jiao and his three companions knocked on the door of one of the courtyards while laughing, and immediately a young woman wearing thin clothes welcomed them in with a smile. Li Laosi raised his eyebrows and understood that the place for fireworks in the city was not a brothel, but a prostitution yard. He was wandering around, and when he saw no chance, he went around to the back. There is actually a small river behind this yard. There are trees planted along the river. There are paths leading to the river from the back door of every house. On weekdays, you can do laundry or take a boat here. He thought for a while, then hid in a tree and stared at the small courtyard. After waiting for more than an hour, he saw that the sun was already somewhat westward, and he was even about to give up. At this time, Mr. Jiao finally went to the toilet in the backyard to drain the water. He couldn't bear it any longer and went straight to touch it. When no one was around, he picked up the laundry stick and knocked Mr. Jiao unconscious with one blow. Mr. Jiao was half drunk. He never thought that someone would plot against him. He collapsed and didn't know anything. Li Laosi jumped out of the yard with the man on his back, stripped him naked, stuffed his underwear into Mr. Jiao's mouth, wrapped his clothes around his head, tied his hands and feet, and then gave him a beating with a hammer. Mr. Jiao was beaten awake, rolling on the ground begging for mercy, roaring like a slaughtering pig, but unfortunately it was all stuck in his throat. Soon, he fainted from the pain, and then woke up from the pain again. Until Mr. Li had enough anger, Mr. Jiao's body was bruised and purple, and there was no good flesh left. Li Laosi finally gave him a mallet and knocked him out completely. Then he took off the clothes that were wrapped around his head, threw him into a bare boat, and untied the ropes that tied the boat. The boat lost its fetters and drifted away along the river. On the board of the boat, the naked Mr. Jiao was half dead. He had no idea that his understanding was about to be revealed to the eyes of the entire Zindu. Li Laosi quickly ran to the city gate, met Li Lao and others, and successfully left the city. When they reached a deserted place, he laughed loudly. "Second brother, I just avenged everyone." "Revenge? What's going on?" Li Lao and others were curious, but Li Lao Si couldn't stop laughing. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 140. Chapter 140. The whole city sympathizes with Mrs. Chiao. At this moment, a pier next to a downtown area in the city suddenly exploded. "Oh, why is a boat floating here, whose boat is not tied up? No, look, there's someone on the boat, why aren't you wearing any clothes? Haha, there is a white striped pig here, with a naked butt. Where, let me see. You offended someone and got beaten? Haha, I didn't slap you in the face, for fear that others wouldn't recognize it. It's such a shame. Who knows who this is from? Hurry up and send a message. What news are you sending? Wouldn't it be better to read it for a while? But whose family this man belongs to, his wife is quite pitiful. Haha, yes, it's so pitiful I'm afraid I'll cry every night until dawn. There is never a shortage of people watching the excitement in the world. Now that half of Tianwu is occupied by barbarians, everyone is pouring into the south of the Yangtze River. There are overcrowding everywhere, prices are soaring, and everyone is full of anxiety. There is such a excitement today, which can be considered as adding a bit of laughter to everyone's life. So Mr. Jiao lay on the deck of the ship for half an hour. The people in the entire busy city, as well as the onlookers who came specially after hearing the noise, and even the brave market women, all saw his in details clearly, and he finally woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the dense crowd on the shore. He was still a little confused. He grimaced in pain when he moved his hands and feet. Just as he was about to speak, a gust of cold wind blew by, making him shiver from the cold, especially the empty space between his legs, which made him instantly mad. Who actually plots against me? He ignored the pain in his body and jumped up while covering his legs. But when I jumped up, I discovered that this actually allowed everyone to see more clearly. So he walked around anxiously, trying to find a place to hide. What a pity, this is just a bare plank boat, it doesn't even have a bottom cabin. On the shore, someone had the courage to shout, "Stop hiding, everyone has been watching for half an hour." Ha 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 ha. Everyone couldn't bear it any longer and burst into laughter. Mr. Jiao pointed at everyone and wanted to curse a few words, but his lower part was exposed again. He simply rolled his eyes in anger and passed out again. Fortunately, several of his companions discovered that he was missing and found him along the river. They quickly rescued him from the boat, wrapped him in clothes and put him in a carriage, and fled from the small dock. However, they still arrived too late, and everyone in Zindu knew about it. But Mr. Jiao's face was not injured at all, and someone he knew had already exposed his identity. The eldest son of the Jiao family, the useless eldest son, joined the Dingbei army as a general because his younger sister became the Marquis of Dingbei. However, within 2 months he made a mistake and was kicked off the job. Of course no one will believe that he has this show because he likes to perform. Maybe he offended someone and was plotted against. But no one cared who he offended, they would only thank him for contributing the details, which was enough to make the whole city laugh for half a month. And the eldest young lady of the Jiao family will never go out again. She cannot face the sympathetic eyes of everyone. Li Lauer and the others laughed all the way back to Broken Gold Beach. It was a pity that they did not see the fate of their enemies. Every family in the village had just lit a bonfire to cook. Seeing Li Lauer and others coming back, they all gathered around and asked questions. Li Laozi gave the things to Tao Hongying, and then led everyone to sit down around the village chief. Li Lauer then said, "People from the north are coming across the river, and they have to divide their land to settle down, and there are a lot of conflicts. I heard that not long ago, there was a fight between the local village and the victims who came to settle down. A few people died." The village chief nodded. Today Hongying and the others went to the village to exchange for radishes and cabbages, but they were almost kicked out. We went to the old man's house yesterday to get some news and exchange some things. Everyone was worried. Then we can't change places, Li Lauer sighed, the area around here is occupied. Indeed, this is the only place that is quiet and independent. And further south, close to Xinjiang, those aristocratic families are fighting for space, and we are in no position to fight. A woman secretly wiped her tears and said, "What should we do? We can't farm here, do we have to wait to starve to death?" The man scolded, "Why are you crying? People think of solutions. There are no obstacles that can't be overcome." Yes, that's a good thing to say. Everyone is still injured, so don't worry for a day or two. We will go up the mountain tomorrow to get familiar with it. Maybe we can find some good tips. The village chief has set the tone, and everyone has no better way to do it, so they can only do this. Li Lauer bought the stick bones and threw them into a large pot to make soup. He then took out a small pot and cooked noodles to serve as a meal for the sick. Pour the chopped cabbage into the remaining half of the pot, add some salt after cooking, and everyone is extremely satisfied. Mr. Wen insisted on having a big pot of rice, and only Mrs. Kui was holding the noodle bowl. The two of them discussed in low voices, "Brother, come with me to the city tomorrow." Mr. Wen nodded and asked hesitantly, "Are you planning to reconcile?" Mrs. Kui took the last bite of noodles and put down her bowl and chopsticks, her expression neither sad nor happy. Yes, I want to make peace with him. Since he is so ruthless and has married a new wife, I don't intend to stay. But I want to get back the things my father prepared for me. Especially the fields and shops here. It's still my mother's dowry, we can't give it away to these beasts. Okay, I'll accompany you. There was a faint light of joy in Mr. Wen's eyes, which was covered by his quickly lowered eyelids. Senior brother, if you are the only one who can't do it, please accompany me to visit an elder first. My father couldn't stop me back then, so he made some plans for me. I don't think they will come in handy now. It's just, I feel ashamed of my father's love. Mrs. Kui lowered her head, 2 tears falling onto her knees, full of regret. If I had listened to my father's words back then, why would I have endured so many years of hardship and now be bullied like this? Junior sister, don't think too much. It's not too late for you to wake up now, and the teacher's spirit in heaven will definitely be extremely happy. Mr. Wen wanted to give some more advice, and he also wanted to do a lot, but he could only sit like this. In the Li family's shack, Ji-yin had just finished eating the meat soup noodles when she was caught by the miracle Dr. Zhang and pricked the back of her head like a hedgehog. She sat obediently with her little mouth pouted, and she was also worried about when she would get better. The space is closed, which is really inconvenient. Jiren felt very distressed when he saw his sister like this, so he carefully carried her around while walking around. Ji-yin suddenly remembered that day when her elder brother put a hatchet on that general's neck. It looked like a rabbit was being cornered, and she couldn't help but laugh. Brother is so awesome. Jiren didn't know why his sister would praise him for his greatness, but he was happy that his sister could speak more fluently, so he teased his sister to recite the Mongolian book with him sentence by sentence. A few naughty boys from Jiaxi's Jian joined in the fun and ran up behind, parroting the words. So, in the dilapidated camp, there were bonfires and the sound of books. As the villagers listened, the sadness on their faces faded away. They still can't be greedy. Their only wish is to live, and while alive, there is hope. The next day, Wen Hai left before dawn and brought a carriage with him when he came back. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Kui said a brief goodbye to the Li family and everyone else, saying they were going to the city to find relatives and friends. Of course the villagers couldn't stop him, they just made an appointment to move around frequently. Ji-yin lay on her mother's back, frowning slightly, feeling that the shadow of the carriage seemed to bring a bit of determination. The third update is here. Today is a chapter that I won't be frustrated with. I'll continue to update the book and get 5-star reviews. He. End of this chapter.